3 counties, 24 cities, working together, accomplishing more than any of us could alone. Whether your roots run generations deep, or you recently moved to Greater Portland, you are a part of Metro, the nation's only regional government elected by the people. Planning for the future, preserving what we love. Let's keep our region thriving for decades to come.
Hello, I'm Rory. You may have seen me at my desk as you came into the Metro Regional Center. Welcome. The Council Chambers is located on the 3rd floor of this building. In the event of a fire or a fire alarm, please exit through the northeast corner of the room. Go down the steps to the 2nd floor, then continue straight ahead past my desk and exit through the main entrance to the plaza outside. The nearest defibrillator is located right outside of the front desk at the top of the steps to Grand Avenue. Thanks for joining us at the Metro Regional Center. We hope you have a safe day.
Lovely. So I'll start our meeting and declare a quorum so that we can initiate with our council business. I'll ask our clerk, Ann Bazzini, to call roll for attendance.
Good morning. Councilor Rosenthal?
Present.
Councilor Hong?
Present.
Councilor Nolan?
Good morning.
Councilor Gonzalez. Excuse me. Council President Gonzalez.
Good morning. Also, I think one of you has your computer off mute. Before we move into public communications this morning, I am very excited to welcome 3 invited guests to share about their work and lives in honor of Pride Month. Sorry, 1 second. Just want to make sure we're good. Yeah, we're good. We're good. We have some feedback. We do have with us today Kayla McGrail, who is the president of the Oregon Queer History Collective. Dr. Kelly Chacon, the Arthur F. Scott Professor of Chemistry at Reed College, very impressive individual, and Alicia Burmese from Beaverton Pride. Thank you all so much for being here. We as a council love these days where we have people from the region come and share and celebrate what makes this the best place to live. So I will now welcome Michael Lee, one of the co-chairs of our ERG, for some words on the significance of this Pride Month. Michael and guests, thank you so much.
Natnam tu pilam mi pilam tiotsum kwalitekin mi ox Michael Lee. Hello, my name is Michael Lee. I use they, them pronouns, and this is actually one of the last acts this year before I step down as one of the co-chairs of the Pride ERG Employee Resource Group, so I'm very proud to be here. I'm also a Regional Capacity Program Manager in the Housing Department. I want you to do a couple of things with me, counselors, and the public. You can do this too. Before we invite our speakers to share today, believe it or not, I want you to take out your phone. Or in my case, phones. You're not gonna open them. Without opening them, I want you to acknowledge the items that are on there, right? So maybe you have photos of loved ones, probably a bit too many social media apps, a couple of addresses, maybe some birthdays saved in there. If you're like me, then your personal calendar lives in there. They're a convenience and they hold a lot of sentimental items. You can put them away. But now I want you to focus on these lovely computers that you have in front of you. They help us distribute information quickly, they help connect us to others, and they allow us to create work. Modern day computing devices like cell phones and computers would look very different and maybe not exist at all today without the innovations of people like Lynn Conway, Alan Turing, and many more members of the LGBTQIA+ community. We're often not taught the significance of what LGBTQIA community has done to shape the world. As these speakers share some of their stories for Pride Month, their innovations, I want you to remember that LGBTQIA plus people have helped shape the world around us. From art to movies, helping popularize the potato, identifying plate tectonics, creating the infographic, if we love that, and so much more. Often these members of our community suffer in their lives as well. Some of the innovators that are on the display wall at Metro Regional Center show them having to hide their identity, getting fired or getting let go of their job, or being medically castrated. In our world, it would be rare to find an item that a member of the LGBTQIA plus community hasn't touched. Maybe it's your computer, maybe it's the clothes you wear, the coffee you bought at some store, or even the presentations that you look at every meeting. Remember that the something you use every day may have been shaped, created, or wouldn't even exist without members of the LGBTQIA plus community. Now I would like to introduce today's speakers. Kayla McGrath, they, them, president of the Oregon Queer History Archive. Dr. Kelly Chacon, they, them, Arthur F. Scott, associate professor of chemistry at Reed College, and Alicia Bernice, she, her of Beaverton Pride, who also helps churches through the process of becoming welcoming and affirming, and is CEO of Beaverton Chamber of Commerce. Kayla, you are welcome to share.
Thank you. Good morning, Council. My name is Kayla McGrail, they, them, and I am the current board president of Oregon Queer History Collective. Oregon Queer History Collective is a grassroots, all-volunteer historical society archiving and preserving Oregon's queer cultural history since 1994. We steward several collections of queer materials, develop interpretive displays, which I think we had one here last year for Pride Month, conduct original research, and make our history visible. We're honored to be here today during Pride Summer to share a little about our region's history. The traditional lands of the Multnomah, Calumet, Clackamas, Cowlitz, Tualatin, Calapoola, Molalla, Chinook, Wasco, and many other tribes which Metro occupies has deep and vast queer histories. Several scholars and community members, including Anthony Hudson and Felix Furby, are elevating indigiqueer experiences across the state that white settler documents have erased, excluded, ignored, and/or destroyed. This is important to acknowledge and celebrate. Our understanding of our pasts continue to be redefined and are ever expanding. Queer people have always been here. This past week, Portland's drag history is being especially elevated with the opening of a new downtown plaza named in honor of Darcel. Drag has and continues to be a cornerstone of our community. Many local organizations, such as Esther's Pantry, would not exist today if it were not for the involvement of drag performers in the Imperial Sovereign Rose Court of Oregon. Alongside our longstanding community of drag activists, dozens of queer people started organizing for our rights in the late 1970s. Such organizing aligned with national trends following the events of the Stonewall Inn uprising, where patrons at New York City's Stonewall Inn resisted police harassment. Of course, this was not the first time queer people fought back. Even 3 years earlier, drag queens, trans people, and street youth resisted police at San Francisco's Compton's cafeteria. Stonewall, though, marked a turning point in activists commemorating the event a year later at the first Christopher Street Liberation Day, which has since evolved into what we know as Pride Month. Further, activists formed Gay Liberation Front within a month of Stonewall as a radical revolutionary group committed to fight the oppression of the homosexual as a minority group and demand the right to the self-determination of our own bodies. This influenced Portlanders to form a chapter of Gay Liberation Front, as well as later groups like Portland Town Council and Second Foundation of Oregon. Portland Town Council and Second Foundation of Oregon were particularly influential across state legislature, working to try and get House Bill 2930 and other anti-discrimination bills passed. Additionally, these groups coordinated the earliest Pride celebrations in Portland starting in 1971 and advocated for Portland's first Pride proclamation in the late 1970s. As we head into the anniversary weekend of the Stonewall Inn Uprising, Oregon Queer History Collective asks Metro Council and all of those in the greater Portland area to commit to actions that ensure we have a past, present, and future, where we are free, acknowledged, included, and protected. These include, but are not limited to, continuing to learn queer history beyond Pride Summer. We invite folks to view our collections that are available at Oregon Historical Society and to get involved with us. Funding projects that honor our histories in the public realm and including our histories in capital projects. Partnering together on educational opportunities like the great display downstairs, and integrating public history into engagement plans, and affirming a commitment to queer equity and justice. I will now pass the mic to Dr. Chacon.
Thank you. Buenos dias. Hello, Council. My name is Kelly Chacon. I use they, them pronouns, and I was born in Washington State's Puget Sound area. We moved to Astoria, Oregon when I was 11 years old. My mother is of British ancestry and my father is an indigenous Mexican and an immigrant to this country. Neither placed importance or planning on higher education, very hard workers, school of hard knocks. But when I was 14 or so, I began skipping school, running away from home, and trying to find where I belonged. I was clearly queer, but could not acknowledge it or be out of the closet, nor did I have people who were out around me to help me find my place. As a partial result of this, I dropped out of high school at 15 and moved in with someone 9 years my senior at 16 years old. I worked in food service for 10 years, but eventually decided to try for my GED at 22. This decision changed my life, and I found higher education in Oregon. I attended Clatsop Community College and Mount Hood Community College before transferring to Portland State University at 25 years old, where after 7 years after beginning at Clatsop, I received a bachelor's degree in chemistry and biochemistry with departmental and college honors. I then went on to obtain a doctorate in chemistry and biochemistry at Oregon Health and Science University, and before I defended my dissertation, I took a chance and applied to a tenure-track position in the chemistry department at Reed College. I've been at Reed for 11 years now, and it is a fulfilling and challenging career, balancing competitive research while teaching undergraduates, as well as serving the Reed community to foster positive change. Reed recently launched the Reed Promise as a gesture to our local community, which offers tuition-free education to Washington, Oregon, and transfer students from around the country whose families make less than $100,000 a year. Another special thing about Reed is our formal, intense year-long senior thesis. From a student-made theater production exploring diversity and inclusion in the sciences, to an environmental studies political science thesis that proposes kid-approved vegan school lunches, to building a device to detect neurotransmitter levels in frogs that could be used eventually to help mental health in humans, our Portland Reedies are doing publishable, fundable work that moves discovery forward in innovative and rigorous ways. I personally knew one thing when I applied to work at Reed. I wanted to stay in Portland. It became my place of belonging. It was where I could be proud as a queer person and as an Indigenous person, just all of me being seen, and to give back some of what was gifted to me. And I wanted to continue the charge set upon me as a graduate of PSU, to let knowledge serve the city. And I believe that Metro has a similar philosophy. But one of the challenges that remains is that despite hosting so many brilliant young minds from all over the country and world at Reed, most do not feel empowered to explore the amazing things that Portland has to offer. It can be called kind of a bubble. And many of our graduates choose to leave this city and take their talents with them. We also have a crisis nationally, as you know, due to extreme cuts in summer opportunity funding, which leaves students in the summers now unable to find internships or employment that will not only help keep our international and low socioeconomic students afloat, but also provide crucial resume experience needed for future jobs in education after Reed. This is where I believe that forging some kind of partnership with Metro to provide summer opportunities or even year-long senior thesis topics working with Metro could be game-changing. We have brilliant students who are passionate about supporting the arts, our local parks and waterways, developing ideas for urban planning and transportation, and mentoring our youth. Reed boasts at least 44% of students as identifying as LGBTQIA+. This is significant, and our faculty as well are high numbers. And many are no longer comfortable returning to their hometowns and countries as they near graduation. I would love for Portland and Metro to be a place where they can see themselves appreciated, supported, and eventually permanently employed. And I think linking opportunities to our amazing students so that they can truly feel like they are part of this community would be a win-win. So thank you, and I'll now hand it off to Alicia Burmese.
Good morning, counselors. Thanks for having us. My name is Alicia Burmese. I use she, her pronouns. I am president and CEO of the Beaverton Area Chamber, but my hat that I wear today is treasurer on the Pride Beaverton Board of Directors. I was born and raised in Chicago and followed my kids west about 5 years ago. Both of my kids are a part of the queer community. My daughter is a queer tattooed pierced pastor of a church in Hood River. When she arrived, although they had called a queer pastor to serve, they were not a welcoming church. And by that, I mean they were not branded as a welcoming church. In the church world, that means something. And so they were all ready to slap the flag on the front door and say, we're welcoming. And I went, no. That's not how we do it. Because when the first trans person walks through your door, Mary Sue, your face can't look like that. So we have to work through what this means. And so I led them through a year-long, 18-month process of asking questions and educating and preparing a congregation whose average age was 65 or 70, what this means to be welcoming to the LGBTQA community, and to understand the harm that the church has done in the queer community. And even though our church may not have caused that harm, it is our job to repair that harm. And it happens slowly and it happens intentionally. So after a year-long process, we became a welcoming church, and members of the LGBTQA community have found their home with us. 2 years ago, I was with the conglomerate of welcoming churches at Gorgeous Pride, and we were packing up for the day, and my daughter shows up in her collar, and as we're packing up, the cutest little queer family I've ever seen came over to her and said, our mom passed away 6 months ago, and we're not part of a church, and we were just hoping you could pray with us and offer a blessing. And so that's why we do that. That's why we show up, right? Because some people aren't willing to walk through church doors, and that's okay. I came out just 2 years ago, kind of explains the failed marriage, and I'm old enough that when I was young, allowing myself to explore other options wasn't safe and wasn't acceptable. So part of what Pride Beaverton is about is providing safe and accepting community. This is Pride's 10th anniversary. We began as a small grassroots organization, and 2 years later established itself as a 501c3. And until 2 years ago, Pride Beaverton was an amazing once-a-year party. So in 2024, the organization began to think about growth and sustainability. That meant expanding our board of directors, bringing in people with nonprofit experience, and becoming much more than a once-a-year. We've enjoyed monthly events that range from a drag brunch to a Q&A with public safety. Conversations like this are important because just as churches have done harm, so has our public safety community. And rather than just standing on opposite sides of the aisle, we look towards how can we repair that damage. And we are thankful to have a police chief and a sheriff that want to work with us to help us do that repair. So no longer does the queer community on the west side in Beaverton feel that they need to venture into Portland, although we do love Portland, to have fun. It's right in their backyard. I recently had a conversation with a mom of a trans child struggling with her child's choices. And she said, I don't know if this is really who they are or if they're just trying it on. And I said, so what? Let them try it on. Provide a safe place for them to explore, don't do that, who they are. So Pride Beaverton strives to provide safe spaces. Most of our events are family-friendly. At our drag brunch, we had so many families thank us because they wanted to take their kids to a drag brunch, but they couldn't because they're always over 21. So we look forward to collaborating with other organizations and helping one another to row in the same direction. Next June, we look forward to rolling out 30 Days of Gay leading up to Pride in the Park. And it's not going to just be us having to produce 30 different events, but it's going to be all of the organizations and businesses in Beaverton that are already supporting our community and putting them all on a calendar so we can enjoy 30 Days of Gay leading up to Pride in the Park. So I am here to say thank you to Metro for your support this year. We couldn't do this without you. We're so excited to have you in the parade with us. And I'm going to hand it back to Michael.
Thank you, speakers. Two last announcements for Metro staff. If you're feeling crafty, later today from 12 to 2 in MRC 410, you can have the opportunity to decorate a Metro vehicle for Beaverton Pride. We'll be painting icons of Metro, including Tulatu, the OCC spires, and creating large tissue papers. You don't have to attend the parade to help decorate the float. You just take the freight elevator to the 4th floor today. And for everybody else, as we come to a close of this year's Pride Month, I want everyone to remember how our daily lives are shaped by the LGBTQIA+ community, and that we are always stronger together. Happy Pride, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming and for joining us. Council, would you like to share any remarks or appreciation for our guests? Councilor Nolan?
I just want to share how tender it has been that you've shared your personal stories with us in a public setting, and that you do feel safe and welcome and empowered, not because we've allowed you to have those characteristics, but because you've taken them. And I am glad to know you all.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rosenthal?
Thank you, Chair. First, I'm not sure which I should be using. First of all, thank you for being here and making the presentation. It's great that you are here and that you feel comfortable. First of all, I want to say a particular thanks to Dr. Chacon, because I'm a graduate also of the Reed program under Marsh Cronin. So it's good to see a Reed chemist here. I think that's great. And then your comments about always being with us reminds me to just tell a little anecdote. When I was growing up in a small conservative town in the Midwest. In high school, I worked for a restaurant. And the community is always there. We had 5 supper clubs in and around town. All of the chefs were gay. And the chef I worked for, J.K. Martin, even threw me a party for my prom. And it was really a great event. Most of the community probably did not realize this, but we ate well because we had really good quality food served. So it was an important part of the community that most people didn't realize. So your point is well taken.
Thank you. Great. Well, again, I just want to say thank you. I think our city and our region has such a proud history of being welcoming and inclusive. And that's something that we need to not just cherish, but also protect. I think too often in our politics, especially today, the LGBTQ community is sometimes used as a political token that is on one side or the other, used as something to be traded or to be weaponized, and that is absolutely something that here in Portland we are going to continue to work to make this the best place for everyone that wants to call this place home. And so I'm so grateful that you made time to join us. Michael, for your work in as chair, you're going to leave some big shoes to fill, but I know that you're going to continue to stay involved and continue to lead at the agency. And to everyone that will be joining us at Beaverton Pride Parade this Sunday, we're very excited that our region is continuing to flourish with different celebrations. So it's wonderful. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short recess and perhaps we can grab a photo together. Yeah.
Great.
Oh.
took some time to be with our guests. We're gonna continue with our meeting here. I'm gonna now open public communication on non-agenda items. Anne, will you please describe to the audience our procedures that we use for public communication?
Oh, yes, I'd be happy to. If you are here this morning to testify on non-agenda items, now is the time to do so. We will have time to testify on resolutions and ordinance number 261547 later today. If you're here in person, you can sign up by grabbing a blue card in the back of the room and bringing it up to me. And if you're testifying on Zoom, you can use the raise hand functions in the reactions or more tab, or if you're on your phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. When it's your turn to testify, I'll call your name or phone number, and for those on Zoom, please click accept, and you will be promoted as a panelist. Your Zoom window will close briefly, or you might hear a pause on the phone, and then you'll rejoin as a panelist. And if you're on the phone, you can press *9 a second time to be able to unmute yourself and speak. Your testimony is limited to 3 minutes, and the timer will begin when you begin speaking. And you should give your name, please, for the record, but you do not need to give your physical address. And I think with that, we will go to our online attendees, seeing no one in the room here to testify. It looks like we have one person who signed up in advance and is here online. I believe this is Sharon Nassett, phone number ending in 585. We'll promote you to a panelist now.
Good morning. Did it unmute?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. It is so hard and it's always nerve-wracking. Good morning. You've had a very nice meeting. For the record, I am Sharon Nassett. I would like to speak today about the fact that you're going to be talking about the budget. And I will be sending you some ideas I had for Prosperity Portland on raising funds. I find that raising funds is one of the best ways to handle budget issues. And one of the recommendations that I made was that our bottle bill, which is a non-deposit bottle bill of currently 10 cents, was used as a transportation to clean up the highways. And we did only single-serve items. We have left a considerable amount of area where we could, I'm not saying that right. So if we did the rest of the liquor and bottles of wine as a 10-cent deposit that is non-refundable and used it for transportation and maintenance, I believe a lot of people who have always said, why isn't wine included or why isn't this included in things, would feel the justice of it. It is a tax that if you don't want to spend, you don't have to use it, and it's not out of necessity. I believe that it could be packaged correctly, and if you look when you're at liquor stores and you're at wine places, at all of those bottles, and think of them as being 10 cents each, it's millions of dollars. In a depression, people buy more booze. When they're happy and the economy's good, they buy more booze. So it's recession-proof. The second thing I'd like to say is that on your housing, until the 1960s, 60% of the housing was boarding houses and rooming houses. It is a huge tool that we need to go back to using and educating people on. I would be very happy to put forth information on that. Until the 1940s, we never had single occupancy housing. It was larger and group. You have good food, you have excellent places to stay, you have the companionship. It doesn't change the neighborhoods. When somebody is living in an apartment, you have individual electricity and heat and water. They're sitting there alone, eating the most expensive food because it's by themselves. But when you're sitting at a table with a group of people, it's the less expensive food. You have somebody to share with, and you have compassion. One of the things about boarding houses, I should say, my father died, leaving my mother 9 children under the age of 18. We had a boarding house until 72. And then in Portland, we did foster care for emergency foster care. And because boarding houses were gotten rid of. They were gotten rid of because of Section 8 and trying to do housing. There was nothing wrong with them. They're decent. They're great. They change everything for our society. So please consider that today when you are looking at it at your opportunity board to add in other ideas that could help us. Thank you and have a lovely day.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon. I am not seeing any other hands raised online, President Gonzalez, and I do not see anyone else here in the chamber.
Thank you, Ann. We'll now close testimony and public communication and move on to our consent agenda. Council, we have 2 items on our consent agenda today. The first is resolution number 26-5621 for the purpose of authorizing Metro to apply for a local government grant from the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. And 2, consideration of the June 11th, 2026 council meeting minutes. These items aren't in our packet. Can I please call for a motion, please?
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Can I get a second?
Second?
All right, moved by Councilor Rosenthal, seconded by Councilor Nolan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, the consent agenda is passed unanimously. Now onto our first presentation. We have a presentation on the financial condition of Metro from 2015-16's fiscal year to 2024-2025. Metro Auditor Brian Evans is joining us today to share findings from his regularly scheduled review of Metro's financial condition over a 10-year period. And we do receive this report from the Auditor's Office every 2 years. So Auditor Evans, thank you for joining us, and I see you have someone else with you as well.
Yeah, thanks. I'll let Caleb introduce himself. I believe he's here for the management response after my presentation. But thank you for the opportunity to present the results of this report. It was released earlier this month. I think we have slides. Yeah, thanks. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview of the report itself. It's an opportunity to look at long-term trends of financial health. It's done every 2 years, like you said, Councilor President Gonzalez. It's relatively data-packed, but we try to keep it relatively simple as well, so you can get a quick snapshot of what things are going on. There's 4 categories of indicators in the report. Several focus on revenue, others focus on expenditure, and then we look at some ratios and things like that that measure financial health, and then we look at economics and demographics in the region that might have an impact on Metro's ability to raise revenue or contain or spend more on costs. The criteria we use for the audit comes from the International City County Management Association, and the data is primarily from Metro's annual comprehensive financial report that Finance and Regulatory Services puts together in partnership with our external financial auditors. Next step, please, or next slide, please. So this is very hard to see, I apologize, but it's the quick snapshot of all the indicators in the report. Metro's revenue and expenditures both grew in the last 10 years, but expenditure grew faster during that time. That growth masked significant variation within Metro. So we have a lot of voter-approved property, business, and personal taxes that raise revenue for affordable housing and housing services. And then you also have some challenges in the venues where reserves are having to be spent down for the Convention Center, Portland 5, and Portland Exposition Center. Metro is increasingly dependent on voter-approved measures to maintain its financial health, and so maintaining that trust with voters is critical. At the end of 2025, 10 of the indicators analyzed in this report showed unfavorable trends. Trends in expenditure and financial health were mostly unfavorable. That includes employee costs, fixed costs, and total debt that were higher than they were after adjusting for inflation 10 years ago. During that time, net assets and capital asset values also had negative trends. While most of the region's economic and demographic indicators were favorable, there was higher unemployment compared to 10 years ago, and the value of new residential construction was also lower than 10 years ago. In recent years, we've also seen that the number of businesses and jobs and the value of new residential construction has declined, which are shorter term trends, but could have a big effect on Metro's financial health in the future. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about the indicators related to revenue. So revenue was up by 111%. And that big spike starting in fiscal year 2021 was from personal and business income taxes that were approved by the voters for supportive housing services. Property taxes for the voter-approved Parks and Nature levy and also the Oregon Zoo improvements contributed to that increase. Sorry, I should take that back, not the zoo, the Affordable Housing Bond. Next slide, please. So this is a quick snapshot of what the current most recent fiscal year ending almost exactly a year ago. So it's a little bit dated, but as you can see, taxes are the largest source of Metro's revenue, followed by charges as services. And charges for services come from Metro's solid waste operations, regional parks, and visitor venues. Next slide, please. Delving down into some of the specific components of Metro's revenue, tax revenue, personal income and business taxes brought in more revenue than expected during the first 4 years. So when the voters approved that measure, the estimate was about $250 million a year. And as we can see from the chart, at least $300 million has been brought in each of the first 4 years. Within these trends, the business taxes have increased by about 13% over the first 4 years, and personal income taxes grew about 22% during that time. Next slide, please. Looking at other tax revenue, property taxes are the next highest. They increased while excise taxes decreased. So property taxes grew by 62%. Most all of that growth was from voter-approved ballot measures that show up in that general obligation bond category. So that purple bar in the middle there. And then excise taxes declined by 12%, and the decline was mostly from declines in solid waste, but also a little bit of decline in construction excise tax as well. Next slide, please. Looking at other revenue sources, charges for services and grants. The last 10 years, revenue from service charges increased by 9%. This was driven by solid waste, but the Oregon Zoo and regional parks also increased. In contrast, charges for services related to the Merck venues, Convention Center, Portland 5, and Expo declined. And then looking at grant revenue was actually up 53%. That spike in 2015 was from $10 million for the Convention Center Hotel project. And then the increase in 2022 was from pandemic-related grants for the visitor venues. Those grants ended the following fiscal year, but Metro also received a little bit of offset in additional grant revenue for solid waste operations. Next slide, please. The final indicator for revenue in this report is comparing what the anticipated general fund revenue was when the budget was adopted at the beginning of the fiscal year compared to what the actual revenue received at the end of the fiscal years. And this trend shows that Metro's estimates have gotten more and more reliable over time. Which means Metro is better able to forecast and account for what it expects to bring in. Next slide, please. Moving on to indicators related to expenditure. Expenditures grew by 199%. Higher expenditures were primarily the result of voter-approved ballot measures for affordable housing and supportive housing services. Next slide, please. Expenditures for employee costs, which are one component of Metro's expenditures, include salary, wages, and benefits, were up 46% compared to 10 years ago. This was caused mostly by benefits for health care and retirement contributions, increasing by 63%. Salary and wages also increased, but about a smaller percent of 39%. Benefits account for about 34% of all Metro employee costs right now, which is above the 10-year average. That indicates that benefits are becoming a greater component of Metro's employee costs over time. Next slide, please. All right, moving on to risk management. This is a wide variation over time, but if you look at just the two endpoints, it's roughly the same as 10 years ago. So risk management fund accounts for expenditures related to insurance premiums, claims, and studies related to insurance needs. And that high amount in fiscal 16 was a result of increased claims paid. Expenditures declined the following couple of years, but have increased recently. And that increase since fiscal year 19 was a result of higher personal costs, claims paid, and insurance costs. Next slide, please. Fixed costs were up by 93%. So fixed costs measure the principal and interest on Metro's long-term debt. They're considered fixed because Metro can't adjust those payments if there's a change in resources available. Higher fixed costs from fiscal year 2020 through 2023 had different causes. The increase in 2020 was mostly from the affordable housing bond, and the increase in principal payments in fiscal 23 was from new bonds to repay previous bonds that had been used for the Oregon Zoo and Parks and Nature program. Next slide. Finally, capital spending was slightly higher compared to 10 years ago, though it's hard to tell with the up and down nature of that graph. This is mostly caused by spending on voter-approved projects for Parks and Nature and improvements at the Oregon Zoo. Spending to renew and replace existing assets increased by 55% over the last 10 years, which is a good sign for government to maintain what it already owns. Next slide. This is a very busy slide looking at just trends by department and venue. It has the most recent fiscal year totals, so you can see Metro's housing and solid waste are the largest departments here. But it also shows kind of the variation with Metro, where you see really strong rapid growth among a number of departments, and then you see the visitor venues having slower growth rates or even declining. And next slide, please. So now looking at indicators of financial health, so total debt rose by 202% compared to 10 years ago. Most of that debt was from voter-approved ballot measures, and they're depicted in that purple bar for general obligation bonds. The spike in 2019 was from new bonds to pay for the affordable housing program, and additional bonds were issued the following year for the Parks and Nature bond ballot measure. General obligation bond debt also decreased the following couple of years, 2021 through 2024, as debt was repaid. And then that increase in 2025 was for new bonds for Parks and Nature and Oregon Zoo. Next slide. Another concerning trend was related to net assets. They decreased by 8%. So net assets measure the difference between what Metro owns and what it owes. Net assets for business activity decreased by 30% since 2016, while government activity increased by 30%. So you can kind of see that trend between the two different types of activity in Metro. Next slide, please. Capital assets, so this measures the value of Metro's capital assets, and it's decreased by about 14% over the last 10 years. Depreciable assets, which are buildings, equipment, and software, decreased faster, 18%, compared to non-depreciable assets like land that decreased a little bit slower at 10%. Next slide, please. The general fund balance is the final indicator financial health section of the report. It measures the ratio of the unassigned fund balance to operating revenues in the general fund. So the size of the unassigned fund balance can impact Metro's ability to withstand financial emergencies if something unexpected happens during the year. In 2025, the ratio was 55%, which was slightly lower than the previous 2 years, but significantly above the previous 8. In 2019, about $15 million of the fund balance was appropriated in the budget, which resulted in that lower ratio. That ensured Metro's budget included reserves for specific purposes, but left the unassigned amount significantly smaller than it had been in other years. Next slide, please. Final slide for indicators. This is a quick summary of all the economic and demographic trends in the report. So personal income, population, the number of jobs and businesses, and the real market value of property all increased, which is really favorable for Metro. However, employment was up and the value of new construction was down compared to 10 years ago. I think the other warning trend here is a little bit of recent years, there's been a decline in the number of jobs and businesses which are a warning sign in kind of the more recent period. Final slide, please. So that concludes my report. Thanks for listening to all my statistics. I want to thank Brian Kennedy, Caleb Ford, and Melissa Weber for their assistance during the audit. I also want to thank David Beller in my office for his work and be happy to answer any questions you have or wait for the management response.
Thank you, Auditor Evans, for your work. Marisa, is there anyone from the Metro staff that you'd like to call up?
Yes, thank you so much, President Gonzalez. I'd like to call Caleb Ford, our Deputy CFO, to his remarks.
Thank you, Marisa. Thank you, Metro President Gonzalez, Metro Council, and thank you, Auditor Evans and his staff. My name is Caleb Ford. I'm the Deputy CFO. I use he, him pronouns. We are very appreciative of this audit. It's a nice 10-year look, a very helpful 10-year perspective, and really confirms what we've been experiencing firsthand. Metro's financial condition is stable overall, but performance has been uneven across its departments and its programs, especially coming out of the pandemic. So in several areas, we're actually stronger and more resilient than we were before COVID, but we're not immune to ongoing pressures. Cost pressures are one of the biggest issues. We're seeing increasing expenditures across multiple areas, and that's something that we're actively managing. Inflation is a huge driver here. It's the same pressures that households and businesses are dealing with on a daily basis. There's important context as well behind these numbers. Not all decreases are weaknesses. The report flags declining excise tax, for example, as a concern, but there's an important policy decision there behind that trend. In 2018, we changed how the Convention Center and Expo Center contribute to central services, moving them from a variable excise tax model to a fixed, predictable contribution. So while excise tax revenue has declined, overall support for central services has become more stable and more broadly shared. Similar to revenue, not all expenses or increases to expenses are negative. Rising debt is intentional and it is also low risk. The audit identifies increases in fixed costs and debt as unfavorable, but we view this a little bit differently. As Auditor Evans mentioned, nearly all of the increase is tied to voter-approved general obligation bonds. These bonds come with dedicated funding sources, so they don't pressure the general fund in the way that other fixed costs do. In fact, we see this as a positive signal of public trust. Voters supporting long-term regional investments is very critical. The broader economy, however, is a wild card. The report highlights some concerning regional trends, especially higher unemployment and slower construction activity. These are not Metro-driven issues, but they do directly affect revenues and demand for services. We are actively monitoring these trends and adjusting our strategies to stay ahead of potential impacts. We use tools such as our robust budget process, which you'll be talking about a little bit later in the agenda today, and our 5-year forecast. So to close, the key takeaway is that we're not passive observers of these trends. We're actively managing them. Where we have control through cost management, financial planning, policy decisions, we're taking action. Where external pressures exist, we are planning conservatively, building resilience. You'll note that in the general fund reserve amounts increasing. Overall, Metro remains financially stable, strategically focused, and well-positioned to navigate uncertainty. So in short, the audit highlights real challenges, but also confirms that many of the trends are either intentional decisions or broader economic forces, and we're managing both of these with discipline.
Thank you so much. Anything else that you would like to add? No. Okay. Any conversation, question, discussion, council, for the auditor or for Caleb? Councilor Rosenthal?
Yeah, just one question. Has the trend between wages and overhead, I've noticed that, has that been an increasing trend of the ratio there?
You're talking about employee costs, Councilor Rosenthal?
Yeah, employee
costs. Yeah, one of the things that I try to do in this report is kind of disaggregate what the salary impact is, which is slightly more in Metro's control compared to the things that are benefits that are really reliant on insurance markets or things like PERS rates that are out of Metro's control as well. And so trying to track both of those things in the same time. But yeah, the data point that I had in the report was that those benefit costs are the things that have started to increase pretty steadily and becoming a bigger component of the overall employee costs perspective.
Okay, so that's been a sort of a steady trend.
Yeah, I would say an increasing trend, but I'll let Caleb talk on it if you.
Again, it's something that is monitored, it's managed. Insurance is a great example. Health insurance costs, when inflationary factors hit insurance providers, our rates go up, but we have a joint labor management committee that looks at our policy design and tries to find ways to restrain those growth, those areas of growth while still maintaining an excellent benefit package.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Councilor Wong?
Yeah, thank you, President Gonzalez. I think I've always had a question around how enterprise funds are treated. And it seems like, we have different departments with different revenue streams. And, I guess for lack of a better word, like profit and loss statements. And when we're talking about a resilient organization, how do we treat enterprise funds? Like, are there any that, like, departments or areas of work that are able to subsidize other parts of the agency? Or is it like a really hard, like, you know, your fund does this and there's no movement? Just trying to, like, understand a little bit more about, you know, the resilience across departments, because I think what we've seen is, you know, sometimes some departments have positive years and negative years, and just wondering how we manage that over time.
Our enterprise funds are for particular purposes. The Oregon Convention Center is meant to stand on its own and not have an expectation to support other departments. The general fund is there for that. So general fund reserves are how we would support a department or a program that's challenged. There are certain tools that are available to us, such as interfund loans. Those are sparingly used. But in general, how we try to ensure that financial resilience is independent fund balance policies for each of our funds, and general fund included, as well as our enterprise funds, that will help sustain them over periods of challenge. And then again, always having that general fund backstop to assist in areas of need.
So a general rule is each fund is separate, and if it doesn't have enough, then we bring in some general fund, but if it doesn't flow the other way, like there's no like profit that can be reinvested?
Typically, no.
Okay.
If I may, President Gonzalez, I think it's not so much the enterprise fund or the designation that something's an enterprise fund that would just restrict the funding. It's the type of revenue that is supporting the activities within the fund that is often restricted. So if we're charging a fee for, I just got louder. If we're charging a fee for solid waste, that fee cannot be used for other purposes. The fee has to be set to recoup costs and, not be used for anything else. For example, there might be some areas where there's for example, the zoo does receive some general fund from property taxes. There are policy reasons to keep that funding at the zoo, but there's not a restriction. So it kind of depends on the color of money within the enterprise fund, but most of our funds are restricted in some way beyond them just being in an enterprise fund.
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Great discussion. All right, well, thank you for the report. We're going to move on with our meeting into resolutions. We do have quite a bit of work here. Our first item is resolution number 25-5591 for the purpose of amending the fiscal year 2025-26 budget and appropriation schedule and fiscal year 2025-2026 through the fiscal year 2029-2030 capital improvement plan to provide changes in operations. I would just like to take time to thank Metro staff once more for guiding us through such a smooth budget process this year for our upcoming fiscal year. But that is not to be confused with this process. Today's resolution affects the current fiscal year that ends this month. So we do have some folks from our team. My notes here say Cinnamon Williams is joining us. I see Cinnamon in the back, but Amanda Akers, budget manager, and please introduce our guests as well, are here to provide an overview of these final changes to this year's budget. My understanding is you have a presentation for us.
We do.
Thank you. Yeah.
So my name's Amanda Akers, budget manager here at Metro, she, her pronouns. And today I have with me John Irwin, my budget analyst. Yes, we did a lot of work this year with a very good team. This is the last amendment in the fiscal year 25-26 budget, and very small. Next slide, please. So as a summary, there are no fund appropriation changes and no position changes, and just a few CIP adjustments that we will see later on in the presentation. And what we will be presenting today is mostly contingency adjustments. So we'll go through that fund by fund. Next slide, please. Oh, before that, this is just the graphical representation of what our appropriations are set at and our FTE count. So as this is the last amendment, this is just to show that there's no adjustments for the appropriations. It will stay at the 1.9 million for appropriation and the 1,136.4 FTE. Next slide, please. In the general fund, we have a request for $50,000 moving from contingency into expenditures. And this is for the Office of Metro Attorney in personnel services. It's to support the benefit costs that were more than we originally anticipated. We do an averaging across the organization when we budget. And as people elect their benefits for the year, they're going to be higher or lower than what our estimates were. So this $50,000 will supplement that for the rest of the year. Next slide, please. In WPES, the Community Enhancement Fund adjusts $495,000 from contingency into expenditures in order to support the disbursement of the fiscal year 26 grants. This is just to ensure that we don't go over the appropriations or the expenditure that we've been provided as we go throughout the rest of the year. Next slide, please. The last and final one is the zoo. In the zoo bond, we have reprioritization of projects and timing. And in such, they have elected to move $750,000 back to contingency as it's not needed in the current fiscal year. And we'll discuss those as the capital improvement plan has those details. Next slide, please. And this is when I will turn it over to John Irwin, who will be explaining these CIP changes to you.
Morning, Council. As Amanda said, I will be covering the capital improvement plan portion of the FY26 June supplemental budget. Not a lot to highlight. I think the changes here are pretty standard for this time of year. We're at the end of the fiscal year, and departments have a better idea of what projects are going to cost through the end of June. So most of the changes were truing up the CIP to match updated project forecasts and timelines. The majority of these are driven by project schedules and prioritization. And then we also had a couple of administrative and technical changes. And the project level details can be found on pages 3 and 4 of attachment 1 in your packet.
Next slide, please. And that concludes our presentation for the June supplemental amendment. We can take any questions or comments now.
Great, thanks. Any comments or questions on these? All right, seeing none, just got an update to the procedure here, so I want to make sure I do it right. But I now call for a motion. Is that right, Ann? Or do I first open a public hearing?
I'm prepared for you to open the public hearing first.
Okay, so thank you so much. I will now open a public hearing on resolution number 26-5591. And if you could please read the procedures.
Yes, as before, if you are here to testify on resolution -265591, now is the time to do so. If you're testifying in person, you may fill out a blue card in the back of the room and bring it up to me. And if you are testifying on Zoom, you may raise your hand. You can do that by using the reactions or more tab on Zoom, or if you're on the phone, you can dial *9. When it's your turn to testify, I'll set a timer for 3 minutes, which will begin when you begin speaking. And if you're in person, if you are testifying, you do not need to give your physical address, but your name for the record would be helpful. And with that, I do not see anyone here in the chamber, President Gonzalez, and I do not see anyone online.
Thank you. So in that case, I will close the public hearing, an opportunity for testimony, and I will now call for a motion to approve the resolution.
I move adoption.
I'll second.
All right, Councilor Nolan motions, seconded by Councilor Rosenthal. Any additional discussion on the motion on the table? Okay, seeing none, Georgia, if we could please call roll. Ren, if we could please call roll.
I'd be happy to call the roll for you. Councilor Huang.
Aye.
Councilor Nolan.
Yes.
Councilor Rosenthal.
Aye.
Council President Gonzalez.
Aye. Thank you. The motion passes and is adopted. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you so much.
Of course. On to our next resolution. We have resolution number 26-5605 for the purpose of approving fiscal year 2025-2026 funding for grants funded with the construction excise tax. For this grant cycle, we are considering today Q2 awards, following an award to the City of Tigard that we considered in early April. Back with us are Sarah Breakstone, 2040 Grants Program Manager, and Hal Hagedorn, Community Investment Manager.
Good morning, Council. For the record, I'm Hal Hagedorn, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Community Investment Manager in Planning, the Planning, Development, and Research Department. Sarah Breakstone and I are here today to talk about the 2040 Grant Program, but before we start, I would just like to introduce Jade Hennes. She is our new program coordinator who will be working and supporting the 2040 and community placemaking grant programs. And so prior to Metro, she was the development director at the Hope Chinese Charter School in Beaverton. And we're excited for her to join our team. So this is Jade. Great, so next slide. Thanks, Jade.
Thank you.
Just stay here. Okay. Now moving on to our today's presentation. As usual, I'd like to provide some updates and context. So last year, we awarded approximately $2.5 million in grants. This first quarter, we awarded $110,000 to the City of Tigard for an update to their TIF district. We received letters of interest for the next quarter, and we are working with local jurisdictions, providing feedback on their projects before they submit full proposals, and we'll bring that back to council once we deliberate with our grants screening committee. And we are currently transitioning to a new online grants management system. Next slide, please. And just as a reminder, this is the process that we go through with each grant cycle. We update the website with new materials. We email interested parties with information and the opportunity to connect with Sarah on their applications. We ask for letters of interest and provide meetings with staff to go through their applications. And full applications for this grant cycle was due April 10th. We received 4 applications in this cycle, 2 of which were resubmitted for our review. Next slide, please. So for the 2040 grants, we have a grants screening committee that reviews and provides recommendations on proposal submissions. We'd like to thank the screening committee for spending the time thoroughly reviewing and discussing the proposals, and we couldn't do this work without them. And so we have the committee members listed on the screen. Next slide. So now I will hand it over to Sarah to provide some of those project updates.
Great, thanks Hal. Good morning, Council. I'm Sarah Breakstone, 2040 Grant Program Manager. So just a quick outline for today. We have 4 proposals that we'll be highlighting for you and then asking you to consider a vote on Resolution 26-5605. Approval of that resolution will authorize expenditure of CET dollars and allow us to execute intergovernmental agreements with grantees. Next slide, please. So first up is the City of Tualatin. They are proposing a project that will create a design framework for future downtown development, including creation of new sub-areas downtown and area-specific design standards for future development. This is really kind of the culmination of a 3-phase project that the city has been engaged with since early last year, early 2025. They started with a robust community engagement effort that resulted in a downtown identity study. And they've been working with a group of students at the University of Oregon to prepare renderings and recommendations related to specific areas of downtown development. So they've been doing a lot of work, and this is sort of the third phase. This project will pull together all of that prior work in addition to additional engagement and analyses, and ultimately create a framework for downtown development as they continue their efforts to revitalize the Tualatin downtown. They have requested $740,000 for this work, and this grant is being recommended at the requested funding amount. Next slide. We have a proposal from TriMet. Just as an aside, I believe this is the first time that TriMet has applied for a 2040 grant. They are eligible as a local government per the state definition of local governments. So excited to see them access the program. This proposal is to do site studies and prepare development concepts for 2 underutilized park and ride sites. One of them is the El Monica Park and Ride in the city of Beaverton, and the other one is the Tigard Park and Ride site in the city of Tigard. Ultimately, the intent of this work is to really better position these sites for redevelopment and enable TriMet to engage with interested developers and get that process rolling. So the work includes a lot of technical analyses, community engagement, partnership with the cities of Beaverton and Tigard to put that work together and develop these concepts and strategies for moving these sites forward into transit-oriented developments. They've requested $640,000 for the work, and it's being recommended at the requested amount. Next slide. This is an application from a team that is the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission in partnership with OMSI. This proposal is to prepare a district identity framework for future development in the OMSI district. So it's really focused on the public realm elements of the area and creating a plan for visual, cultural, interpretive elements that create a sort of unique and cohesive identity for the district as development occurs. This district identity framework is required as a condition of approval on OMSI District Central City Master Plan that was approved by the City of Portland, I believe in 2023. So this is something that has to be done and approved by the City of Portland before development can move forward in the OMSI District. So it is a critical key to unlocking development in that area. This application has been revised and resubmitted after the applicant team received some technical support. They applied initially late 2025 and were not recommended for funding at that time. So they used some technical support that we offered, and this is their resubmittal. They are requesting just under $500,000, and it is being recommended at the requested amount. Next slide. Last proposal is from the city of River Grove. They are proposing work to do a really solid audit of their comprehensive plan and their zoning code. Both documents are pretty out of date at this point and have not been thoroughly updated in quite some time, and they have identified a lot of places in both their comp plan and their zoning code that are creating barriers to new development. There's outdated information in there. There are places in their zoning code where they are not consistent with recent state and regional rules. And so they would like to do a comprehensive audit of their planning and development documents to really identify where those barriers are, where those inconsistencies are, and then create an action plan for future amendments to both their comp plan and their zoning code, with the intent of a potential phase 2 application to do those amendments at a future time. This is another application that has been revised and resubmitted after working with us on some technical support. They have requested $103,000. The funding, the recommendation for funding is $93,000. There was an element of their scope that the screening committee felt more comfortable not including, which was development of an application for a phase 2 grant. So we have removed that piece of their scope, but that is still, they will still be eligible to receive technical support if and when we get to that point for a phase 2 application. Next slide. So those are the 4 proposals before you today. We are asking that you vote on Resolution 26-5605. Total recommended funding for this cycle is just under $2 million. If the resolution is approved and funding is awarded, then we will work with the grantees to create intergovernmental agreements and they can get started on the work. As Hao mentioned, we are expecting another handful of applications for the 3rd quarter cycle. We already have letters of interest from 5 applicants, I believe. Those full and complete applications are due July 10th, and we would expect to come back to you for awards probably late September. And I believe that is it. Next slide. Yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
Lovely. Really great award recommendations. Counselors, any questions or conversation, discussion on the presentation today? Counselor Rosenthal, please.
Well, I can wait until after we make a motion, or I can, because I don't have a question.
Go now. Yeah.
All right, first of all, I want to support these things, and I want to say a couple things about all of them, because they sort of are either in or close to my district. City of Tualatin will also potentiate some connections to the Tualatin River Trail, and we recently helped them buy an important piece of property which will tie in the regional trail with the downtown, and Tualatin is one of the few cities, you know, on the Tualatin Basin that is actually on the river. The downtown is on the river. So this is really a win-win sort of situation. As for TriMet, I'm the liaison to the TOD committee, and TOD funding has been something that's been very successful. It's never the big charge of funding, but the more we can look at underused sites and add that extra little bit of funding to projects, and we can get more funding with better transit. And so that's a good thing. As for the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Council, I think that this is an important area. As you know, the river is undergoing a reimagining process, and our support for the OMSI district is an important part, but it's part of a larger whole of making the river really one of the key segments of our economic opportunities throughout the region. And then finally, City of River Grove is actually in Councilor Lewis's district, but it's right across the road, I-5, from my district. And I always like it when we can give small cities some additional assistance, because they have real staff limitations. I think River Grove is a population of 500 or 600. And so it is maybe the 2nd smallest city in our districts. So I think that's a good idea.
Thank you, Counselor, for that. Counselor Huang?
Thank you, President Gonzalez, and thank you for the presentation. I think all these projects are great and really aligned with the program goals. My question kind of is, you had mentioned there's a new process coming forward with LOIs and things like that. And, you know, I believe in the individual merit of each project, but like what is left in our 2040 fund for the rest of the year? Because I think.
Oh, yeah, good question.
I just want to understand.
Yeah.
Are we just spending all our money now, or are we going to see great LOIs come in and have no money? Like.
Yeah, so we have an annual allocation of about $4 million each calendar year. Last year we spent $2.5 million, so there was, you know, extra. And so far this year we have spent $110,000. So with this batch, we'll be right around $2 million, and we have 2 grant cycles left for this year.
And do you anticipate high demand?
Well, there are 5 projects that have submitted LOIs. 4 of them are for that planning inside the UGB category. 1 of them is for concept planning, actually. And I have the amounts, I just don't have them in my head. But it's probably somewhere around another 1.5 to 2 million coming for Q3. And then there's one that I know of for Q4 that is probably going to be somewhere between 500,000 and 700,000. So that would put us, at or a little bit over $4 million for the year if all of those grants were awarded. But then there is the consideration that we were under last year.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure we're
Yeah.
not spending all our money on this round and
Yeah.
have nothing for great projects in the future. But great work, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, wonderful. Well, as you were going through the slides, all I could think about was these investments are going to bring our region back to the place that we love. It's just these investments are so significant, so special. And then personally, seeing the TriMet planning for TOD, there's few things I love more than seeing a parking lot turn into actual space that our communities can benefit from. So it's wonderful to see TriMet stepping up and continuing to activate the assets that they have. So that's wonderful. Councilors, I'll call for a motion on resolution number 26-5605.
I'll move adoption of resolution
Thanks, Counselor.
5605.
All right, moved by Councilor Rosenthal and seconded by Councilor Nolan. Y'all are on a roll today, by the way, just saying. If there's no additional discussion on the motions on the table, I will call on Ann to call.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Aye.
Counselor Huang.
Aye.
Counselor Nolan.
Yes.
Council President Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you. It's approved and funding can move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, now on to our ordinances. We have a first reading and public hearing on ordinance number 26-1547 for the purpose of amending Metro Code Section 2.19.280 to add one member to the Supportive Housing Services Regional Policy and Oversight Committee. Thank you, Liam, for joining us. Our Housing Department brings this ordinance before us today to improve connections between American Indian, Alaska Native, tribal, and urban indigenous communities and Metro's Supportive Housing Services Regional Policy and Oversight Committee, ARPOC as we call it. Metro staff, members of council, and I personally received some significant, meaningful feedback from our Native community regarding the lack of American Indian, Alaska Native, tribal, and urban indigenous representation on ARPOC. That omission was a mistake on our part, and we do take responsibility for that. I do apologize to our partners. In response, I have directed Housing Department staff to work with our Tribal Affairs program to establish a new voting position on ARPOC. Liam Frost, our Housing Director, can share details of the ordinance and rationale for this change. And I understand you have a presentation for us, Liam.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. Good morning, Council President and councilors. For the record, my name is Liam Frost. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am the Metro Housing Director. As President Gonzalez noted, ordinance number 26-1547 would add one new voting member to the Supportive Housing Services Regional Policy and Oversight Committee, or ARPOC, as we lovingly refer to it as. This new member would bring knowledge and expertise in serving American Indian, Alaska Native, tribal, and urban indigenous communities experiencing homelessness. Like other non-elected ARPOC members, this position would be appointed by Council President and confirmed by the Metro Council. If Council chooses to adopt this ordinance, Metro staff will support the Council President through a competitive recruitment process and provide appointment recommendations. Because the ordinance cannot take effect for 90 days after adoption, which is typical, our goal is to have the new member seated by the October ARPOC meeting. The rationale for this ordinance is straightforward. Adding this expertise would strengthen the committee's ability to understand and address homelessness across the region. According to the 2025 point-in-time count, homelessness among American Indian and Alaska Native community members increased by 118%. That increase was disproportionately higher than we saw in other demographic groups. The 2023 Multnomah County point-in-time count found similarly disproportionate rates of homelessness among American Indian and Alaska Native people.
Together, these findings highlight the importance of including this perspective in regional policy discussions. But in addition, many American Indian, Alaska Native, tribal, and urban indigenous individuals and families access a combination of tribal, federal, state, local, and community-based resources. Understanding how those systems interact with supportive housing services will help inform our regional response to homelessness. Finally, I'd like to thank Oscar Arana, Chief Executive Officer for the Native American Youth and Family Center, otherwise known as NAYA, Leilani Ovales, who's sitting right behind me, I believe, who serves as the policy and coalition strategist for NAYA, Alice Hodge and my team, and especially Metro Attorney Carrie McLaren for her work, a lot of work over the last few weeks and a couple of months, so thank you, Carrie. And especially to you, President Gonzalez, for your leadership and direction on this matter. I really appreciate it. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Liam, councilors, any questions or comments before we move on to our public hearing? Councilor Huang.
Yeah, thank you, President Gonzalez. I just want to commend you for recognizing this oversight and making amends and adding it. I hope we'll examine our processes in future committees to make sure that, you know, we aren't making this kind of oversight again. And then, you know, at the first RPOC meeting, we had a very long discussion about committee structure. And I think it was pretty clear that we're not adding any additional seats, making adjustments at this time, but this one is very warranted. So I just want to be clear on that with our constituency. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, seeing no other hands up, I will now open a public hearing on ordinance number 26-1547. And for anyone that is joining us, if you could please reread the procedures for providing testimony.
Absolutely. If you are here to testify on ordinance number 26-1547, now is the time to do so. If you are joining us in the chamber, you can fill out a blue card from the back of the room and bring it up to me. And if you're joining us on Zoom, you can raise your hand by using the reactions or more tab, or by dialing *9 if you're joining us by phone. When it's your turn to testify, I'll call your name or your phone number, and you'll be promoted to a panelist. If you're on Zoom, you will have 3 minutes to testify, and the timer begins when you begin speaking. If you are, if you could please state your name for the record. You do not need to state your address. And Council President Gonzalez, I see no hands online, and I see no one in the chamber.
All right, thank you. Seeing no testimony, I will now close the public hearing. A second reading and consideration of ordinance number 26-1547 is scheduled for July 2nd, 2026, where the council will take up with a vote.
Do we need a second hearing? Can we just put in the emergency and get to work on this? We have an RPOC meeting coming up.
Gonzalez and Councilor Fogg. Our ordinances typically take 90 days. I'm going to diverge a little bit from answering the substance of your question to answering also what I understand to be some policy background that our Tribal Affairs program believes this period of time is actually useful to do outreach to the tribes and make sure that we can conduct an adequate recruitment process to seat the member. And so with that background, I think it's somewhat hard to justify an emergency in this circumstance. I also understand in my discussions with the Housing Department that our Tribal Affairs program will be attending the RPOC meetings in the interim to make sure that they can provide advice and perspective that's needed to reach decisions. So my advice would be to just continue with the ordinance as is. But if we wanted to, if it is the will of the council to declare an emergency, my office can work with council office and housing to amend the ordinance for your deliberation at the end and make those findings necessary for the July 2nd meeting.
Yeah, we actually looked into this with OMA and with Katie McDonald from our Tribal Affairs program, and I also was remiss in not thanking Katie for her work on this and helping prepare it too, so thank you very much, Katie McDonald. what we concluded was that the typical 90-day period of activating an ordinance actually overlaps really well with the kind of outreach and recruitment that Katie had recommended to us to do. So after council makes its decision, then if you approve this ordinance next week, we will get to working with our tribal affairs program to do that outreach and that recruitment.
Thank you, Liam, and great question, Councilor Wong. Councilor Rosenthal, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a quick question. If we declared an emergency and moved more quickly, would it put somebody on board in time for the September meeting of RPOC? Or, I mean, that would be the major potential impact that it would have, is coming on board with in an earlier meeting. And I'm just wondering if that would even work in terms of the 90 days, because the 90 days is sort of a fixed number.
I think the 90 days is a fixed number, Councilor Rosenthal.
I think if I understand President Gonzalez and Councilor Rosenthal, the councilor's question, it's could staff complete the necessary outreach to tribes and the community in order to both recruit and carry through the council appointment process in time for that new member to join the September meeting? Is that a correct restatement?
In other words, we're talking about 1 week difference here, and I'm not sure that 1 week difference would actually get them on board sooner, because the RPOC meetings are monthly. If I'm not correct.
They are monthly, yes. We'll have to get back to you on that. I don't have an answer right now for you.
Yeah, I am looking, I guess, to the council for some kind of direction as to what you would like to pursue. But what I heard from Liam is that the 90 days feels like a pretty important kind of period to engage with folks, and the creation of the seat is, we're moving at lightning pace to initiate a pretty broad scale recruitment. So I am seeing some acknowledgement for staff that our current timeline is appropriate. And although we are working to recruit the seat, I do want to acknowledge as well that our Tribal Affairs Department program is advising pretty heavily on SHS matters, especially since we received the first bits of feedback on this. So the perspective is really being woven into the work as we go forward, especially understanding that someone will be onboarded. I wanted to add that as well. Councilor Wong.
Thank you. My concern was that we wouldn't be able to proceed and start work without having this ordinance in place, but it seems like if work is happening in a meaningful way and we're on track, then there's not a real need for an emergency.
I see.
And I would just like to comment that, presuming this goes with the procedure that we have set out, and that by the time of the September meeting, we have identified a potential candidate, or even identified a likely candidate that the chair is going to recommend, that person, make sure that a person is invited to at least sit in on the meeting, even though they're not officially a member.
And if I may add to Councilor Rosenthal, because we had the opportunity of sunsetting the Oversight Committee and the Tri-County Planning Body, the Metro Housing Department created a comprehensive onboarding plan for the RPOC members. So as soon as we identify that likely candidate that President Gonzalez will appoint, we will be doing that outreach, sitting with that person and making sure that they'll be up to speed in that first meeting that they attend.
Okay, great.
Yeah, there's like hours of onboarding. It's a lot, for sure.
It's a lot of work.
Okay, so going back to our current action, our second reading consideration of this ordinance is scheduled for July 2nd, 2026. Thank you, Liam, and thank you, Council, for the discussion and the urgency. Our next ordinance is a second reading, and we have a vote, which is ordinance number 26-1545 for the purpose of annexing to the Metro District approximately 29 acres in Hillsborough along Northeast Evergreen Road and Northwest 273rd. On June 11th, the Metro Council held a first reading and public hearing for ordinance number 26-1545. We received testimony in favor of the ordinance on behalf of the applicant. As a reminder, since we heard two ordinances for annexation matters on June 11th, this ordinance affects the industrial property. Glenn Hamburg, Senior Regional Planner, is here to answer any questions. If there are any questions, please raise your hand, Council. Okay, seeing none, I will call for a motion on ordinance number 26-1545.
I move adoption.
Counselor Nolan moves,
I'll second.
seconded by Counselor Rosenthal. Any additional discussion for our motion on the table? All right, seeing no more discussion, and if you could please call roll.
Counselor Nolan?
Yes.
Counselor Huang?
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal?
Aye.
Council President Gonzalez?
Aye, thank you. The ordinance passes, Glenn. Great work. On to our next ordinance. We have ordinance number 26-1546 for the purpose of annexing to the Metro District approximately half an acre along the Northwest Springville Road in Washington County. Metro Council is also held a first reading and public hearing for ordinance number 26-1546 on June 11th. We received no testimony on that ordinance. Councilors, are there any other questions for Glenn on this ordinance? All right, seeing none, can I please call for a motion on ordinance number 26-1546?
I move adoption.
Second.
All right, moved by Counselor Nolan, seconded by Counselor Rosenthal. Any other discussion for our motion on the table? Seeing none, and if you could please call roll.
Counselor Huang?
Aye.
Counselor Nolan?
Yes.
Counselor Rosenthal?
Yes.
Council President Gonzalez?
Aye, thank you. The ordinance is moved forward and adopted.
Thank you.
Of course. Glenn, thanks. Great work. And I believe this now takes us to our communication segment of our meeting. I'm going to call on Chief Operating Officer Marisa Madrigal for updates.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. One note, I'm just trying to verify the agenda that I've got printed here says that Malou will give an MPAC update and also that Marta McGuire will give an RWAC update, but I have a different note.
Your note is correct, COO Madrigal
That
Sabrina.
is a core update?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Because our walk is today.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
What clairvoyance.
Well, yeah. So if Malou could, come on up, Malou.
Thank you. What is happening in the future?
All right, good morning, President Gonzalez, members of the Metro Council. I'm Malou Wilkinson, Deputy Director of Planning, Development, and Research. I use pronouns like she and hers, and I'm here to give you an update on the MPAC meeting that happened last night. MPAC was held virtually, and we had the pleasure of having President Gonzalez come to MPAC to share his vision for Metro and how MPAC can be involved. MPAC also heard an update on the Future 50 engagement, including results from the recent survey and conversation about the upcoming Future Fest and the Vision Summit, similar to the presentation that you all had on Tuesday, and discussion of members focused on how to reach people who aren't generally well connected to government and haven't been as engaged. And also, if we think about the conversation that we heard about that topic, it highlighted the critical importance of really lifting up people's perspectives from any specific place and focusing on the cross-cutting values that are shared across the region. Next, we had the economic development team, which includes Aaron Key, Jay Cromwell, and David Tetrick, give an overview of the work that they're undertaking based on your guidance from earlier this year. And MPAC members were generally appreciative that Metro was undertaking this body of work to help support the regional economy. We heard interest in an updated inventory of industrial land, particularly if it's an online tool that is maintained regularly and could be used by anyone looking to support industrial development. We heard a bit about concerns about the structural imbalances between jurisdictions, industrial development being a way to help jurisdictions raise tax funding, and some cities are more focused on housing development. And so that concern was raised up. The concept of regional gain share was brought up as a concept to address disparities. And there was conversation about the importance of collaborating with local jurisdictions to understand the barriers and opportunities and understand the local economic opportunity analyses. There also was interest in making sure that as Metro is thinking about economic development, we're also thinking about not just new businesses, but retaining and growing the businesses that we already have, and aligning that work with other regional goals, ranging from green spaces to family wage jobs. And then last, as part of our 2040 growth concept look back, we had 2 cities come to present at MPAC on their experience at the local level implementing our regional plan. We had staff from the city of Portland talk about their experience in the central city, in the Gateway Regional Center, the Lentz Town Center, corridors, and neighborhoods. Portland has really led the way in many ways in housing production over the last few decades, but that experience has differed around the city depending on location. And one surprise has been the amount of housing growth that happened outside the central city, particularly in the close-in east side places like Division Street, North Mississippi, and nearby neighborhoods. The Tigard staff came and spoke about the Tigard downtown, where the city has really worked to improve their downtown through things like a community gathering place, cleaning up brownfields, affordable senior housing, building improvements for small businesses, changing their zoning. They've built over 1,000 apartments in downtown over the last couple of decades. But they have challenges with incomplete streets and limited redevelopment opportunities. So MPAC's next meeting is in July 22nd, and I would love the MPAC counselors to add anything that I may have forgotten from the meeting.
Excellent. Councilor Rosenthal?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. The interesting thing about Tigard is they actually have 2 downtown areas, different TIF districts. One is the Tigard Triangle, which was originally one of the foci of the Southwest Corridor Rail, and the other one is the core downtown area, and they're really quite different, and the development is quite different. Most of the dead-end streets are in the Tigard Triangle, and they recently purchased a large facility and are developing a new park, and they're probably going to ask us for money for that at some point.
Councilor Huang?
Yeah, thank you. A lot of great presentations. One of the first presentation on Future Vision, there was some interesting commentary that I've just been processing and thinking about. I think one of the questions was around, the level of scientific rigor that our approach has. Are we reaching a statistically significant sample size to really capture the region sentiment, which I thought was interesting. And it's we have a very comprehensive approach, but I'd like to think a little bit more about, is there any sort of academic rigor to it? One of the comments I found concerning was, how are we accounting for bias from community-based organizations? Because we do rely heavily in our strategy on those. So I don't know, I've been just contemplating what that means. It's a lot of these orgs that do advocate for their community. Is that considered bias? I don't think so, but I don't know. Just thoughts that came up, which I thought were interesting comments and critiques. But I don't know if staff had another response to that they would want to talk more about in coming work sessions or something like that.
Thank you, Councilor Wong. That is an area of it's an area of concern that we have been talking about, and we use statistically valid surveys for specific purposes. We don't generally use them for engagement purposes. But we have been working really hard to bring in the results from other efforts that Metro has undertaken into the Future 50 process. So we'll continue to do our best with that. We need to be sure that we're talking about it in a way that is inspiring confidence and not concern. And then I also don't have a great answer right now for the concern that was raised about the potential bias of community-based organizations, but that is something, again, that we need to really talk through and be sure that we I feel confident in that approach. I think that we hear from many groups on a regular basis, and our CBO outreach helps us reach groups that we don't typically hear from. And so I think that's really critical to what we do, but we again need to be really clear in how we're framing and talking about that so that all of our partners around the region feel really confident in the way that we're approaching engagement. So I think we'll keep talking about that, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I mean, having not stayed for that part of the meeting, I find that to be kind of a strange complaint, I guess. I mean, you know, a community engagement survey versus a scientific poll are kind of different avenues that you take. But I get the kind of the feedback and the criticism there, but I just see them as different tools for sure. And I'm not sure if this was a local government person or not that said that, but
yes,
you know, are all of their, you know, local governments engagements scientific polls, or are they doing similar things? So I take it with a grain of salt for sure.
President Gonzalez, one of the exact examples was like, we might hear from a community-based organization that they want to see, you know, universal preschool or something, and like, maybe their voters wouldn't go for it. And it's like, I don't, like, asking for what your community needs isn't bias. And I think in the context of setting a future vision, if community members like, I want to see, you know, my family have childcare, like that, I don't know. I just want to be sure like that's not bias. That's like telling us what, you know, your needs in the community are, sort of thing. So I just want to be careful about that line of questioning.
I'm glad you, Councillor Huang, I'm glad you brought this up and your response was good. It was an interesting question, and it is true, you can make a scientific analysis of a specific question, but it's impossible theoretically to come up with a scientific basis for asking questions about the future. There's too many questions and too many interests. It's just not, it's really, it sort of boggles the mind to think about doing that, but it raises an interesting question for discussion: is how representational are we, and how do we account for bias, and the questions that are important in any future vision. So it's brings up an interesting point.
Yeah. I think there's a whole bunch of different biases that exist in nature of everything, right?
Right.
And if we don't pursue the strategy that we have, the biases that the people that have the most resources and are most connected drive the ship. That's one of the primary concerns with the 1995 future vision. Was that it's one of the gaps that existed there. So anyway, this is a great conversation. I think we all generally agree with the philosophy of what we espouse here, but I think I see our COO also wants to contribute to the conversation.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. I'll just note that the scientific surveys that we have done, as far as what they reflect, what people's priorities are pretty much in line with the top line results of this engagement survey. There's not a whole lot of difference between what people say is important to them in this survey than what we see in our multiple scientific public opinion surveys that we've conducted about housing, about parks, about everything. So just a note.
True, for sure. Well, anyway, great, thank you. I appreciate conversation on the dais, as I'm sure we've all talked about recently. Malu, thank you.
Thank you.
For the update.
Thank you. Sabrina Owens-Wilson is now going to give us an update on the last core meeting. Welcome, Sabrina.
Good morning, Metro Council President Gonzalez. This is the first time I've gotten the chance to say that, so congrats again. And good morning, Metro Council. For the record, my name is Sabrina Owens-Wilson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Department. I'm here to provide a brief summary of CORE's meeting last Thursday, June 18th. As you recall, the Committee on Racial Equity's role is to advise council and staff on Metro's strategies to advance racial equity through programs and policies. At the June 18th meeting, committee members heard a number of items, including an update on the Future Vision project. Core members received a project background and weighed in on how they would like to engage in the project. Several core members said that they were interested in attending the Vision Summit and getting more visits from the project team. They're also looking forward to longer engagement on this project in the fall. CORE also had a presentation from the Lone Fir Memorial Project. This engagement came out of an interest from CORE to learn about this project's approach to culturally significant projects, and by extension, to learn about the agency's engagement practices on culturally significant projects. There was a lot of appreciation from the committee on the ways that the project has pivoted in response to community feedback. And I really want to thank the Parks and Nature team for working closely with us on this presentation. This engagement has had complexities, but the team's commitment to this project carried us through. And it was a great opportunity for core members to hear about the hard work and community participation behind the scenes. I also want to take a minute to thank Councillor Wong for your support during the Lone Fir core engagement. It meant a lot to core members to hear the personal significance of this project, as well as how the Metro Council has supported this project. Lastly, we welcomed 2 new members to the committee, and this was their first meeting, so we're glad to welcome them into this space. I'll stop there and invite Councillor Wong as our liaison and other councillors for any questions.
Well, I was only there from the beginning. That was the night that Councilor Rosenthal went to the Coalition of Communities of Color Summer Soiree, which was a great event, and one of our core members, Lucero, planned the event, so glad I got to go support in that way. But yep, thanks for the update. I didn't have anything I can really speak to what was discussed. But.
Thank you. Excellent. Anyone else? Sabrina, thank you for joining us. Anything else, Marisa?
Thank you, President Gonzalez. Just a couple small things. Just wanted to make council aware that we are monitoring changes to federal rules governing grant making and grant awards. The impact of the changes isn't incredibly clear yet, but the thrust seems to be a desire to convert some of the executive orders into rules. So we'll keep council up to date on any particular impacts of that. And then I just want to note that on July 15th, Metro is hosting a panel for Climate Week called the Climate Lab. Thank you to President Gonzalez, Councilor Wong, and Councilor Lewis for participating in what is planned to be a discussion of climate resiliency in the region through the lens of the Future Vision. So really looking forward to that. We're one of many organizations that are participating in Climate Week up and down Cascadia. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councilor Communication, any updates? I know there's a lot, I know you all do a lot. Okay, seeing no updates, I will move to adjourn our meeting. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for June 30th at 10 a.m. And council will now, at noon specifically, meet in executive session in room 275 or
375.
375, pursuant to ORS 192.660 subsection I, to review and evaluate the employment-related performance of the chief executive officer of any public body, a public officer, employee, or staff member who does not request an open hearing. Thank you.